Welcome to the Plato Paradigm, a paradigm shift in reading Plato's dialogues. Episode 193, IO 540e to 541b. Socrates is still making the point that to judge someone who has a techne, the judge also needs that techne and not another one. He's just given the example of horsemanship and playing the kithara, and noted that to discern who is good at horsemanship, one must use the horsemanship techne, not the kithara playing techne. And now he is reversing the two to make the point that all techne are exclusive, which is a wrong point, but it is an assumption made by Io, and it is Io who has failed to realize that techne do not have exclusive rights to a particular subject matter. However, the two techne currently being discussed are completely different. Horsemanship and kithara playing do not seem to have any overlap at all. So it would seem that at this point, Socrates isn't trying to make Io realize that techne can have an overlap. For example, the techne of composing poetry has overlap with the rhapsodic techne. The poetry itself is a subject matter common to both techne. However, here, horsemanship is to do with horses and riding, while kithara playing has quite a lot to do with playing the kithara and not with horse riding. So these two are completely different, and it may even reinforce Io's assumption that techne have exclusive subject matter. Ukun ekaitus eukithoridzontas diagignoskes, homologes an, he kithoristes taute diagignosken, al he hippius. Nay. Therefore, if you were discerning those playing the kithara well, you would agree that you are discerning by that by which you are a kithara player, and not by that by which you are a horseman. Yes. This is simply the opposite of what he said last time, that in order to judge a horseman who is being a good horseman, you judge him by the techne of horsemanship and not by kithara playing, while now you judge who plays a kithara well by the kithara playing techne and not by the horse riding techne. This is another way of showing absolute exclusivity of the subject matter of both techne. All this needed to be established because Io still thinks that being a rhapsode grants him the ability to talk like a general. It's to this point that Socrates now returns. Epede ta strateotika gignoskes, patron he strategos gignoskes, he rhapsodos agathos. Udenemoi gedokedia feren. But when you know military matters, do you know them by that by which you are a general, or by that by which you are a good rhapsode? It seems to me that there isn't a difference. This isn't actually a complete parallel to the kithara playing and horsemanship example. In that case, Socrates was asking by which techne Io could distinguish good kithara players and good horsemen, while here he isn't even using the same verb, instead of dia gignosko, he's using gignosko without the dia. And that is quite different. It's not to discern or to distinguish, but simply to know, to get to know. And it isn't the people being judged who are judged to be good, but the rhapsode himself who is good, who knows military matters. Again, he isn't even talking about discerning good generals, but knowing the subject matter of a general. As a matter of fact, Io is not a strategos, he is only a rhapsode. When Io says he sees no difference between that techne by which one is a strategos and that techne by which one is a good rhapsode, is he demonstrating an inability to follow the argument, or have we missed a small detail here? It seems to me that Io would agree with the general argument that a general is the best for distinguishing between good and bad generals, not that that was the question here, and possibly that a general is best at understanding military matters, which is the point of this little question. It seems to me that Socrates' addition of agathos, good, to his description of the rhapsode is to check to see whether Io is still applying his assumption of the exclusivity of the subject matter of techne, or whether he has reverted to the idea that professionals in any particular techne are simply better judges than rhapsodes. But rhapsodes are still capable judges. It's only recently that we've had the black and white exclusivity. Had Socrates not said good rhapsode, Io may have had to say that it is the one with the strategike techne alone, in other words, the strategos, who understands military matters. But the moment Socrates said good rhapsode, it allowed Io to think, this is my understanding at the moment, it allowed Io to think that a good rhapsode is as good as a strategos, general, at understanding military matters. And this brings us all the way back to the beginning of the argument, when Io thought that the rhapsode was the best person to explain anything in any techne in a Homeric poem. Had the dialogue stopped here, I would have outlined the stages as, first of all, Io assuming that a rhapsode could expound on any of the subjects. That is his first mistake, the assumption that a techne is about subject matter. And then Socrates points this out by asking him all the time who is better at judging, one with the techne of the person being judged or the rhapsodic techne. And there Io is obliged to say that the one with the techne of the person being judged would be a better judge. Following that, Socrates turns to questions which reveal that Io also has the notion that there is exclusivity of subject matter in the techne, which means that the rhapsode would never be better than anybody else, would be unable altogether to judge anybody else, because the subject matter is of another techne in every instance. But then by adding agathos to rhapsodos here, the good rhapsode, we might think that Io simply equates the rhapsodic techne with the strategike techne, perhaps the strategos alone is better at judging military matters, but a good rhapsode is just as good as the strategos. This is what I would have thought had the dialogue ended here. Pos uden leges differen. How do you mean that they don't differ? Mian leges technen enaiten rhapsodicen caiten strategicen e duo. Mia emwige doce. Are you saying there is one techne, the rhapsodic and strategic, or two? One, it seems to me. Hostes ara agathos rhapsodos estin, hutos kai agathos strategos tun chaneon. Malisto, Socrates. So whoever is a good rhapsode, this person also happens to be a good general? Very much so, Socrates. Ukun kai hostis agathos strategos tun chaneon, agathos kai rhapsodos estin? Uk almoi dokei tuto. So too, whoever happens to be a good general is also a good rhapsode. Now this doesn't seem to me. Al ekenomen dokesoi, hostis ke agathos rhapsodos, kai strategos agathos enai. Panuge. But that seems to you, whoever is a good rhapsode is also a good strategos, general. Absolutely. Notice that now Socrates has added good to both parts. It's not simply that a good rhapsode is like a strategos, he's like a good strategos. We should note that in the previous questions about the horseman and kithara player, they were mutually exclusive. The relations between them were reciprocal. Having the kithara playing techne did not allow one to judge who is a good horseman, and having the horsemanship techne did not allow one to judge who plays the kithara well. Yet Io doesn't see reciprocity in the strategos rhapsodos pair. There's quite a good reason for this. The rhapsode may feel that he can talk about military matters, but he knows that a good general isn't known for being a good rhapsode. This is simply a matter of reality. Io doesn't seem to be using logic here. If he were to use logic, he would have to agree that a rhapsode who is a general, necessarily, must mean that then a general is a rhapsode, because they share the same techne.